And let the record show all council members are present.
Mr. Malamud, Brad.
Mayor Pro Tem, council members, tonight you have two items on your closed calendar session that are illegally set for closed session. The first one is memorial care. I responded to, I sent a letter to the city and the city attorney, and I got back in an email that said, quote, review them with the city manager and internal with my peers this morning. As a bottom line, I am going to recommend the council delete the item of litigation memorial care matter from Section A. I think that you make a good point. This exception is not well suited for situations like this. The lawsuit has been dismissed. My point is you can't have this in closed session because there's no litigation pending. So that item must be struck. I'm surprised it wasn't struck before I got up to speak because Scott said he would strike it. As for item B, conference with property negotiators, again, my understanding is there's no negotiation going on with the hospital. That was done by a settlement agreement. That settlement agreement doesn't require negotiations at this point. It allows the city to move forward with eminent domain if it wants to. And again, regardless of what Mr. Russo is doing with regard to an RFP, that's simply not subject to closed session meeting. So those are two absolute violations of the Brown Act. We don't need more litigation over the Brown Act. But what even bothers me more is why do I, as a resident, have to raise these issues when we're paying a city attorney to review these issues and a city manager to also review them, and they both talked about it. This shouldn't take citizens to make this council comply with closed session requirements of the Brown Act. I'm asking that any council member that has a backbone refuse to meet on those items and walks out because they are not permitted. I also have this question of, there are two more. Again, I've been complaining about this for about 5 years now. Items C and E, anticipated litigation. As I've informed the city over and over again, we are required to be provided the name of the supposed litigant and the documents subject to both of those items unless the person is unaware that there's potential litigation. We don't know because we're not told. Well, if something was told, it is impossible that for now 10 years not one item has been disclosed, not one. So not once has somebody sent the city a letter or discussed the item and said, I'm going to sue the city unless blah, blah, blah. Not once have we been told the name of that person. That's illegal. Again, I ask you to walk out of the meetings if you find out that there was sufficient information that the city should have posted the name and provided us the documents. I don't want to take up any more time. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Scott?
Yeah, if I could, thanks. I do appreciate Brad and his comment on the first item of litigation. We looked at that again. That case was dismissed with prejudice. It's not before the court anymore. The court didn't retain jurisdiction, and so we're recommending that it not be included here, and we actually don't need to discuss it. With the same is true with regard to the second case. Since this was generated, the federal court dismissed the Housing is a Human Right Orange County case against the city, and so we have no need and can't right now discuss that case in closed session. The other cases remain active, and we intend to discuss and strategize. I don't know if we'll have time to talk about the case against Foothill Eastern Transportation Corridor. If we do, I expect that Mayor Pro Tem Bain will recuse himself when we're talking about the case, the joint case, and we'll announce that when we reconvene. C, I can't talk about except to say that the potential defendant in that case doesn't know what it's about or that we're talking about it, so we're squarely within the statute on that. I do need to disclose that item E is about facts and circumstances contained in a threat against the city filed on, well, dated October 25th by the Orange County Employees Association, where they threaten to seek a cease and desist order from the California Public Employees Relations Board. That letter is a public document, and we need to talk about risk assessments and the response to that under E.
Hey, Scott, any comments from, I had one question, Scott, and just not to make this harder, but housing is a human right. The court did give them leave to file new causes of action by November.
Right.
Is that something that we could technically talk about?
We could talk about that part
of
of it if you'd like to do that.
Okay.
We
I just
can
wanted to
do
make
that.
sure we're not foreclosing that opportunity if I had a
Beg your
question.
pardon. Yeah,
All right.
that part and that thread can be
Okay.
discussed.
So with that,
I have a comment.
please.
I communicated back and forth with the city attorney over the weekend on item E. Item E is not a legal representation of the conference with legal counsel in closed session. I believe it's a Brown Act violation, number one, because we do know who the parties are. They're not listed. The document should be provided as well tonight if it's going to be discussed. But there has been a threat. We do know who that is, and that wasn't legally described. So I will not be participating in that because I think that's an illegal description in violation of the Brown Act. And back to Mr. Malamud's concerns, we talked about those today. I think we corresponded, city attorney with Mr. Malamud, and I won't be participating in number B with the real property negotiations on that one. It's not worth going to jail over with the threat of a Brown Act violation on that. So I won't be participating in B or E. And on that with the closed session, I have one more item, however. Yesterday, the city clerk sent me a copy of a lawsuit we were served with that council wasn't informed about in a real-time manner, and it's something I requested, and I got it on Monday. Is there any prohibition on you, Scott, describing what that lawsuit was about so that we can be transparent with the public on receiving another lawsuit against our city this week?
Well, that's not on your agenda, so I'd hate to talk about it without having you add it, but it is available with the clerk's office. It was a follow-up to a claim alleging ageism on behalf against the plaintiff, and that's definitely a public record. It's subject to subrogation and defense by the Joint Powers Insurance Authority, but if the council would like a status report on that, to the extent it can be done publicly or in closed session, we can ask them to provide that.
Thank you, but again, it's a public document, and
That's right.
and are you prohibited from describing
I don't have it in front of me.
what that lawsuit entails
I said that it dealt with ageism.
and
age
who it
discrimination.
involves?
I-
Who's it against?
It's against the city. I don't have it in front of me. Off the top like this.
Ageism? Okay.
Yeah, I don't even remember the plaintiff's name, I'm embarrassed to say, and I could find that, but it's not on the agenda to be
Okay,
discussed.
but you just can't remember it, okay.
Yeah, if you gave me a sec, I could look it up, but I just
Okay,
wasn't
that would
ready
be
for
great
that.
if you could. I just believe in transparency, and I was a little bit taken aback that when our city receives a lawsuit, we've received communications on such lawsuits and amendments to lawsuits when it regards the hospital or the toll road or homelessness, but not on a lawsuit we received this week against the city. So the picking of choosing of sharing information with council, and I appreciate city manager getting back to me and letting me know that I wasn't exempt from that information, that none of the council members were privy to that new lawsuit. But yeah, Scott, if you could look that up and provide that during the meeting, that'd be
I can do
great.
it when it's
Thank
my
you.
turn to report, sure.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments?
Yeah, so I just got one comment. I've been doing this for 7 years now. I've never had a council member sit out on closed session items, but if that's what Laura wants to do, I have no issue with that, and I'll make a motion that we adjourn to closed session.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
call the meeting to order.
The City of San Clemente respects the many people of different faiths who reside here. The City Council historically begins its session with an invocation offered by one of the religious leaders of our community with full appreciation of our shared belief that we are one nation under God. And while the city cannot endorse any particular religion, we respect the religious freedom and freedom of expression of all our citizens to pray as they feel led to pray. This evening's invocation will be given by Don Kapoff, chaplain with the Orange County Sheriff Coroner.
Great, so if everyone could please rise for the invocation and remain standing afterwards, and Councilmember Ward is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Would you please pray with me? Heavenly Father, we thank you for San Clemente. We thank you that we can call it home, that if we're lucky enough we get to work here, raise our kids, our grandkids here. We are so blessed to have San Clemente to be part of our lives. Tonight, Father, we lift up everyone here that serves for San Clemente, from the City Council to the police, fire, lifeguards, and everyone else. Father, we ask your protection upon them. Ask that you would protect all their citizens, the families, our children and our grandchildren, Father, that you would keep us all safe and healthy. We ask that these proceedings tonight, Father, would go orderly, that people would be respectful, and that good decisions will be made. In Jesus' name, amen.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Councilmember Ferguson. Councilmember Ham. Here. Councilmember Ward. Here. Mayor Pro Tem Bain.
Here.
I believe that two council members have proposed continuing two items on the agenda. Those items are 7C, which is the public hearing for zoning amendment 290, regulation of secondhand dealers, and item 8A, proposed commission and committee changes.
Correct. I think both Councilwoman Ferguson and I made that request, the idea being we're going to have a full council hopefully soon, and those two items we felt it was important to have a full council here and decide those.
I'll support that. Second.
Great. So, and just before we make that motion, I want to add to that, actually, let's make that motion. I'll second that motion. Motion and second, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Passes 4-0. And then I wanted to propose to my colleagues here that we rearrange our schedule tonight. We've got a lot of items I'd like to work through pretty quickly. We've got an election, so we can try to get to it. If we could move oral communications and consolidate that with oral communications number 2 to the end. And then also the toll road update and update on the homeless issue, move those to the end of the business meeting today as well, to all be heard after our regular business items.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, so motion second, all in favor? Aye. Passes 4-0. So just so the public's clear, we're going to do an hour of public communications at the end of the meeting tonight, not split it in two, and then the homeless and toll road update. I know there were 6 comment cards on the homeless update. That's going to now be at the end of the meeting after the public hearing items. Okay? And then everybody caught that 2 items were continued to the next meeting. Joanne, can you announce that again so that folks are clear?
Yes, the 2 items that were continued are items 7A, that's the public hearing on the zoning amendment 290, regulation of secondhand dealers, and also item 8A, the proposed changes to the city commissions and committees.
So I'll make a motion to waive reading in full of all resolutions and ordinances. Second. So a motion and a second by Councilmember Ham. All in favor? Aye. Passes 4-0.
Closed session report, City Attorney.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor and Council. There was no reportable action taken in closed session. Before we adjourned to closed session, there was mention of a lawsuit that wasn't on the agenda that's being handled by the city's carrier as an insurance defense item. That lawsuit was served last week against the city by a plaintiff named Margaret Hamer. It alleges age discrimination on behalf of city management. As I said, it's been tendered to the city's JPIA for defense and indemnification, consistent with our commitment from that carrier.
Great. I just wanted to note also for the record that I recused myself on the closed session item related to City of San Clemente versus the Federal Eastern Transportation Corridor Agency.
Before we move the item, I just want to confirm as well that Councilwoman Ferguson recused herself. Okay, perfect.
I'm looking at the ones I recused myself on as well, and I recused myself from closed session items B, conference with real property negotiators, property 654 Camino de los Mares, and also E, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation. Thank you.
All items listed on the consent calendar are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion without discussion, unless council, staff, or the public requests removal of an item for separate discussion and action. The public has requested the removal of items C, M, B4, and H.
So you said B4?
Yes.
Anyone from the council have any they wish to remove?
Yeah, I'm gonna move 6B4A, remove 6B4A. That's the 119 Avenida San Pablo star.
I'll move the balance.
Second. So a motion by Councilmember Ward, second by me. All in favor? Aye. And then I guess moving to item B4.
Hopefully my item will be real quick here, guys. So I pulled 6B4A. It's on the lower page, number 6B4-1, and it's approval for a star in 119 Avenida San Pablo. I'm going to ask that we pull this item up and hear it as a council at our next council meeting or whenever we can do so. Just to be clear, it's in relation to a star being approved in a residential low area, which per our ordinance should not be allowed. Stars are supposed to be regulated to medium zoning and high density zoning only. So my recommendation is to pull it and hear it as a council.
Okay. So
At staff's earliest convenience.
I would be okay with that.
Okay. And just for the public, the star is a short-term apartment rental, to the extent you're not familiar with that term. So a motion by Councilmember Ham. Oh, do we?
There are cards.
Oh, yeah, okay. Randy Quillman, followed by Ignat Bokel, and then John Rodriguez. If you could line up over here against the wall, if your name is Randy, you'll be first.
Hi, I'm Randy Quillman. I live on Avenida San Pablo. Just wanted to come in and speak a little bit about the apartment house that's there. That is actually a house or apartment. It's next door directly to my house. The one thing that I did want to mention is that initially, when I first moved there, it seemed like it was not that big of a deal because it was just a regular neighborhood. But I found out otherwise. Moving in, at that time, there was a non-resident owner there, and the problems is people would have parties, they would abandon cars in front of my house. Every trash day, there were 3 garbage cans for each unit, 12, and there were no place to park and things of that nature. That was in the past. One thing that because I don't have very much time, the person that is the current owner, though, right now, has turned it around dramatically. And it's much cleaner, it's quieter, there's no more people getting sick in front of my yard or coming over and saying that one of the tenants is going to kill them and we need the police, and the police don't come around and turn the lights off anymore. That's in the past. So I just want to say that I'm very pleased about that. And the prospect for the change for the new rental type, I think might be to my advantage anyway, because it does 2 things. One, it It reduces the number of garbage cans. I spoke with Ignat, and he really said that it's dramatically reduced from the 12 garbage cans down to, I think, 3 or 4. And for me, that's an important thing, because on that street, people that live higher up come down and channel through that street when they see Avenida San Gabriel has people queued in at the signal. So they come rushing through pretty quickly, and I've even seen those cars hit parked cars. But I guess what I'm thinking is that I think this would be, so far it's a nice change right now. I'd like to encourage that continue forward. I also want to mention that, the prospect of temporary versus the long term, because the long term it was just a different crowd, and it was at all hours of the day, all hours of the night. And in one sense, it seems like that would be kind of an enhancement to the neighborhood, frankly. As far as parking goes, the other thing that he has done is done a lot better job about parking with his current thing, and I guess I'm out of time.
Okay, thank you, Randy.
Yes, so that's what I'd like to say.
All right.
And besides that, Ignat is an outstanding guy, very good guy.
Thank you very much, appreciate it.
Thank
Ignat? Then John Rodriguez?
Good evening, council members, Mayor Pro Tem. My name is Ignat Bacal. I've been a homeowner in the city of San Clemente for almost 7 years now. I live at 119 Avenida, San Pablo, my primary residence. The objective of this project is short-term rental housing units B, C, D, while living unit A is my primary residence. In order to provide these accommodations, my main concern is the peace and quiet that my neighbors enjoy. I make sure guests who are approved for the reservations are vetted through the platforms, their backgrounds are verified. Before being accepted as guests, they must be approved via all the available checks and balance system. Not just anyone with a credit card would be accepted as a guest. In addition, I use all the available technologies in order to ensure safe and quiet environment for our neighbors. One of those technologies is a noise-aware system. It's a company out of Texas. They'll notify me in real time if a noise level is higher than allowed in predetermined levels, for example, louder than allowed TV or a dinner party after 8 p.m. Let's talk about my target customer. My number one customer is a current San Clemente homeowner, our neighbor who is remodeling their home, their kitchen, their master bath. They do not want to put their family in a dirty motel room with a disgusting carpet. My number one customer wants to stay in San Clemente in a safe, professionally designed, professionally managed place with a fully stocked kitchen, stainless steel appliances, and sparkling clean linens. Quality customer, quality product. My customers are families who are in San Clemente because they're looking to become homeowners and taxpayers in San Clemente. They're shopping or closing on a home in our neighborhood. My customers are families who are visiting their relatives, my neighbors here in San Clemente during the holidays. My customer is a business traveler here on business in South County and want to stay in a pretty place by the beach that feels like home, not a big brand name hotel room or a dirty motel. My customers are medical travelers who are getting procedures done in the area and need time to recuperate before being able to fly home elsewhere. And finally, my customers are families with kids who are in our beautiful town for the weekend, enjoy the beaches, the weather, eat in our awesome restaurants. Zoning department approved permit conditions, parking, all guests to be parked on the property, not to take up any street parking, straightforward, easy for me to enforce. Maximum occupancy, strictly enforced. I carry specified insurance, and there is no other short-term rentals in a 300-foot radius from my property. I will make it my mission to find and report any illegal short-term rentals to city code enforcement officers. So I'll make the city's job easier. Real quick, additional questions that were raised by my neighbors, some driving fast down Avenida San Pablo. Like Randy mentioned, people are trying to avoid the red light on San Gabriel and El Camino, so they make a right turn on our street, race down San Pablo. They're not my tenants, they're actually San Clemente locals, coming down from the hill above. When my guests are driving down the street, they're usually driving slow because they're looking for the correct address and don't want to miss it. In closing, opportunities provides, of course, City of San Clemente with additional tax revenue, supports our San Clemente economy, our restaurants, our grocery stores, our farmers market, and I'm only hiring community members, local cleaning crew, local landscaping.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mr. Rodriguez, followed by, is it Marie Harris? Marcy.
Hi, my name is John Rodriguez. I live in San Clemente at 606 Calle Canasta. And I've known Ignat for over 7 years. He's a colleague of mine. He's a man of his word. And, everything that Ignat says, he's a man of his commitment. He also is a person that is going to look out for the community, look out for his neighbors. And he's helped me in the process of things like, coming to live here in San Clemente. I know San Clemente because of Ignat. He loves the city, and the last thing I would think that Ignat would do anything to have any nuisance created by the short-term rentals. Ignat is is a person that he goes by the rules and regulations. So, yeah.
Great, thank you, Mr. Rodriguez, appreciate it. Ms. Harris?
I'm Marcy Harris. I'm a San Clemente resident. I met Ignat through a professional organization that trains and educates short-term rental operators to coexist and follow all city regulations in the communities where they live. I work in the accounting department, and I help short-term rental owners, be compliant in those ways, make sure they're paying their taxes. So I've known him for a few years. We encourage monitoring of units, making sure that all guests are screened and they're actually adding value to all neighborhoods. I happened to just call Ignat this week because I had a mold issue in my kitchen and I needed a place to go with my kids that are at San Clemente High School. And he invited me to come speak tonight, and I was happy to do that. And I was happy to have someone to call who is a professional operator who could help me out in this time of need. And I think it's a great asset to our city. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that's all the speaker cards I have. Yep, so we had a motion and second. Any other council?
Who was the second?
Councilmember Ward. Any other council comments before we vote? So a motion second, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Passes 4-0.
Could we have a motion to approve the balance? That was to call it up, correct?
Yeah, that was the call.
So could we have a motion then to receive and file the balance of those minutes?
I'll second that. So motion by Councilmember Ham, second by me. All in favor? Aye. Passes 4-0. Move the balance of 6B. And I think we have 6C.
And that is the warrant register.
Brad?
Council members, residents. This is about the warrant register, which for all the residents, that's our checks that we pay. So somehow we pay them first and then approve them later. It's an interesting concept. I was represented in an email that from the city attorney. I have never represented that these billing cycles are met with precision, but we make our best effort. Billing dates for 2019 average 22 dates. The city contract with BB&K, our city attorney and his law firm, is that all bills will be submitted within 20 days at the end of the previous month. Then we are told that, quote, BB&K and the city subject our billing to exhaustive review. I've asked through California Public Records Act for that number of write-offs that have occurred on BB&K's level, the number of write-offs that occurred at the city level, and the expertise that the city has to review the bills, which is none. I've reviewed the BB&K warrant registry entries since it started, since the law firm started in this town, and in general, all invoices are included in a single check every warrant register, which is every 2 weeks. There's numbers of them. This one appears to be an anomaly, where there's now 3 checks being issued on 2 separate warrant registers. That hasn't happened that I can tell in the history of the situation. And just so you all know, an astounding $126,539.41, which is a good portion of another policeman, was billed just in one of those entries. Another one was $13,332.05, and the final one was for $2,412.80. Instead of being consolidated, they were on 3 separate entries. These entries were not within 22 days of the end of the billing cycle. In fact, for the one, there were 12 invoices. 4 were for April, May, and July of 2019. 6 were for 2018, and inexplicably, 2 were for 2017, over 2 years old. I asked this council not to approve any of these payments, but in particular, I asked them to deny the $13,332.05 because those were 6 months to 2 years old. And we need an explanation if we're going to pay bills that are that old. How did they fall through the cracks? Scott has told us in the past they fell through the cracks because the city didn't process them fast enough. Well, if the bills were back from 2017, did the city hold them for 2.5 years? And if they did, that's inexplicable also and not very professional. So I'm saying tonight that we have a contract with our city attorney, and I like Scott as a person, but we have to look at this as a professional relationship. And our city has a contract. It calls for 20-day submission. I suggest the city council deny $13,332.05, and it also denies the $2,412.80 on the warrant registries. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments from the dais?
Just a clarification, I'd like to ask Mr. Sund, Assistant City Manager, why were invoices held from 2017, 2 of them, and then 6 from 2018?
I'd have to look at the actual invoices and look at the detail to be able to communicate that. So I don't have those in front of me, unfortunately.
And why
but I
were
can-
they paid now?
Probably, there's a lot of different reasons. I'd have to look at them, and I can get back to the council and report on that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay. Motion? Okay, so a motion.
I'll move the warrant register.
Okay, motion second. All in favor? Aye.
No.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Passes 3-1. Next is H. Joanne, do we have any speaker cards on this?
I appreciate you guys putting this resolution on the agenda tonight, but I'm going to ask that you pull it and that we look at it another time, because we need to ask for recompense. This audit is actually 3 years old. From 2015, it's 5 years old, and the admissions policies at the UC have gotten progressively worse every year. And for 2020, the class of 2020 is guaranteed no seats at all. According to the UC website, there will be only giving California resident students admission to the UCs on a space available basis. It's already state law and the master plan mandate that any recent high school graduate who graduates in the top 12.5% of their class will be guaranteed a seat at an appropriate UC. UC's use of the referral pool to UC Merced constitutes a fraud upon the public. These kids do jump through all the hoops to get into the college that they were promised, and the state legislature by law has guaranteed that they will fund a seat for each of those students. So there is no incentive for the UC to sell those to international and out-of-state students. After the 2015 audit, the UC and the Board of Regents settled with the auditor, and the settlement was to guarantee 10,000 new seats. And unfortunately, what Janet Napolitano did as the UC president was create a new tag program where she guaranteed admission to community college transfer students with a 2.4 GPA while denying our best and brightest a seat at all. The conduct of the Office of the President was so egregious that the conclusion of the auditor and the conclusion along with that of all the LAOs since then is that taxpayers deserve a check, recompense, and it's about $160,000 a student. This has happened to 130,000 students since 2007-8. So I would like us to reword the resolution asking, and I'd send it to the State Attorney General asking for our money for each of our kids. They can be identified with a single public records request, and that these kids use that money to pay back their student loans, since most of these kids are now out of state. and it's caused a big brain drain out of our public education system. When you have kids that are in the top 95% of the country being replaced with community college kids, and it's undocumented students. Janet Napolitano withheld $175 million in taxpayer dollars and used that to subsidize undocumented students' room, board, tuition, and they got the UC seats with a 2.4 GPA. That's unconscionable, and I'd like to see it go to the Inspector General of the federal government. Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
I got a question real quick. Don, instead of just bringing this back, what if we just added your paragraph here by strengthening capturing school district resolution? I am encouraging the city council, so we obviously changed that wording, but to ask the state of California and UC Board of Regents for recompense for all San Quentin residents.
I'd be fine with that, and then I'd also like that you add who you send it to include the federal government.
Yeah, that's easy. Are you good with that?
I would be good with that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm supportive of that, so I would second that motion.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll just read it in here. We'll do a big clap then if you guys want. So hold on. So then it would be a now therefore on attachment 1. After the second therefore be a third now therefore. The city council asks the state of California and the UC Board of Regents for recompense for all San Quentin residents that have been financially damaged as a result of these admissions practices. And then we would add to the list of who we sending to be amended to include the people that were requested by Don. That's my motion.
Thank you very much.
And the state attorney general as well.
And the federal inspector.
So motion, I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes 4-0. Do you have any comment cards for 6M? Brad?
This item for the residents is an additional $227,800 for, again, Scott Smith's firm, BB&K, for litigation over the homeless issues. This started in July. I read, thanks to Chris pointing out that I hadn't read the last time, I read the staff report. There's nothing about how much we've already spent. There's nothing about how much was appropriated the first time. That was July, just a few months ago. There's nothing about why we need another over 1,000 or close to 1,000 hours of legal work. And there's nothing about why we're using BB&K and their inefficient legal services for this work. Again, I recommend, and I'm disappointed per se that this council approved the warrant register when the staff was unable to even explain why they were paid. This is again a same example. Staff does not tell us why you should approve this. So why are you going to approve this item without even the public comment? I mean, it was going to go through without any comments. $227,000 would fund virtually a major portion of another sheriff. Yet we're going to spend it for litigation over homeless issues with no explanation of why. What is so difficult that 1,000 hours, that's a half a year's work, is required on this. We don't know if it's going to trial. We don't know the status of it right now. We don't know if discovery is going on or not going on. We don't know how much the money that was already approved has been spent or billed. We don't have those bills to review whether that work was done efficiently. This council is going into a deficit budget. I hope all the residents realize that when the budget comes up, we are negative. We will not have enough money to pay our bills on an ongoing basis. Challenge me on it, that's okay, but for the last 3 years, we backstopped our budget with $6 million a year that we had saved up for a rainy day and other events. We're now spending it, and we won't have it left to spend this coming year. And yet, we just, without any comment from the staff why it's necessary, is this council really going to approve $227,800 with a staff report that's one page and says nothing about why this is necessary? I hope Dan, who's a lawyer, understands that this, you just can't give them permission. You need to cut this off now, come back in 2 weeks and explain it to us. If there's a reason for it, let's approve it. But I can't imagine there is, and if you are going to approve it, let's see the bills, redact out any privilege issues. Let's see what they've spent to date. This council has to be smarter with $227,000 if we're going to go to a budget and not have sheriff that we need in this town. And you'll hear tonight about why we need more sheriff. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Any other comment cards?
There's a comment card for me.
Susan Smith?
Go ahead.
Susan, come on up.
Great, thank you.
You're coming on item
Item M.
6M?
I'm just curious if there's any other costs associated with the legal fees for the homeless shelter and how much they are. I don't have any record of any disclosures. When you click on the case, you get this $227,800 amount. Are there any other amounts? Where are they? Where's the supporting documents? Where's the disclosure? How much money have we spent to date on litigation just in this particular case alone for a unpermitted homeless shelter? An unpermitted illegal homeless shelter. By the way, for Scott Smith, Dan Bain, you're a land use attorney. I'm guessing that you guys have guided the rest of the council on how to proceed with the homeless encampment. And it's really shocking because you look at all these costs and it's like, wow. I mean, can we even afford the permits needed for a camp that's not supposed to be next to a preserve with endangered animals and coastal scrub? Couldn't we use the money for a sheriff? Or maybe go towards following the law and doing what the law says so we can enforce our anti-camping ordinances? Because the way I look at it is that we're spending a lot of money just trying to defend some really poor decisions. Because at the end of the day, it might not be the only lawsuit. I mean, there's a lot of people that are losing patience. You guys are creating a nuisance emergency situations by locating a homeless camp. I don't know if anybody's ever done the math or taken steps or figured out how far it is away from the homes, but it's really close. And it does violate the city and state ordinances of 150 feet. So I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, the litigation costs are $500,000, which how many sheriffs could we pay for that? And I'm just talking about this particular case right here. I'm not talking about any that could be potentially coming in the future or any costs associated with fines that the Coastal Commission can impose daily. And if you think you're going to get a waiver from the Coastal Commission, you guys forgot about the Marblehead Coastal Preserve that you pushed off the agenda tonight. Because what is that, $2.6 million in assets being transferred to the city, spent with homeless destroying it on a minute-by-minute basis. Very poor decisions.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Any other comments? Yeah, and after you, I'm going to jump in as well. So go ahead. You want to start?
I'm ready. Yeah, I just can't resist. The plaintiffs in this case are seeking to allow homeless people to camp anywhere they want, just like they did last year. So that's why it's expensive. They take no hostages. They've stiffed the city for the preparation of the administrative record, even, which any plaintiff with half a brain and half a heart and half a conscience would have paid for. And that's what this fight is about. We've prepared a detailed, down to the 0.10 of an hour, litigation strategic plan that we've shared with this council and with its staff, and which we don't share publicly because we don't want it shared with the opposition. So we have to spend more than $250,000 in this defense. I take real strong offense to the allegations made by Mr. Malamud, because in the federal case, the city won last week. The case was completely dismissed with prejudice, and this city paid only a sixth of that cost because other clients of our firms coalesced with you to pay the rest. The cities that participated in their own lawsuit in North County under a different banner are paying, if they're your size, about $2 million a year to run homeless shelters. So that's what you get out of this. I don't mean to sound amped up, but I am, because we've done a heck of a good job in this case, and we're against a formidable opponent who has laid every other agency that fought them completely prostrate out. And so that's, I've never done this, but I just can't resist, because I think we have killed it. You've killed it in this case. It's not a flawless approach. There are still people suffering from homelessness everywhere in this state, but you've made crazy, amazing progress in trying to tackle this problem, not just by acquiescing and letting them roll over you, but by hooking them up with services to help them with the problem at significant expense, and those have been quantified. But your approach has been very effective, I think the most effective of any city in this county, and it's been extremely cost-effective. And part of that is defending this. If you roll over and allow this to happen, they just get to camp anywhere they want. In Sea Summit, in North Beach, anywhere they want, just like before. So I just want to say thank you for your support and explain what the heck we're doing, because it adds up and it's been very effective.
Thank you, Scott. Councilmember Ferguson?
Oh, thank you. Yes, I know you mentioned that we can't share the budget, the case budget for litigation's cost and fees, but how much have we spent to date? We can provide the number without providing a document.
Certainly, we can get that. I don't know off the top, but we can certainly provide that.
And how could we let the public know about that? Is that something you could put under perhaps the homeless topic on the website?
At the next council meeting, we can come back at the homeless update and we can communicate that to the public.
And we can have legal and non-legal, certainly, council member, that we can provide that.
Yeah, that'd be great to do that. I think it'd be great to put on the website too, in spirit of transparency, what we've spent and what's approved tonight, so people are aware.
If the council wants to give me that direction, I can do that.
We've had 2 people speak on that, and it'd be helpful. I'm sure others are curious how their taxpayer dollars are being used, and just get that up there. Just to be transparent would be helpful, I think.
Any other council comments before I go?
Oh, yeah, I got a couple. So I'm not opposed to putting on the total legal costs for the homeless battle up to this point on the city website. I'm comfortable with that. I do have a couple issues, though. Dan, I'm sure you're going to want to clarify. Are you legally guiding the council or the city in your position here as a council member? No. Okay, just thanks for that clarification. And then, Eric, I just need to confirm that we did not operate at a deficit this last budget cycle?
That is correct.
Okay, and did we dig into emergency funds to the tune of millions of dollars the last 6 years?
That is incorrect.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'm Councilmember Ferguson?
I was just going to say that our current budget does show that we are going to be going into deficit spending in 2020, however.
Since we're going to get into the discussion, do you want to just shortly explain why it does show that deficit moving forward?
Correct. In the LTFP for the last 3 fiscal years, we've shown that in the future years, 2020, 21, we see a potential deficit. However, we've communicated through the LTFP workshop as well as the budget workshop that we will avoid going into a deficit and provide a balanced budget to the city council.
So that's why we do a long-term financial plan. And just before Dan gets in here, because I know he wants to, I just want to say that I know for a fact that anything that goes on the warrant register has already been pre-approved, checked. Everything's gone through with every department head, every staff member, and your office, and that's how it goes out. So when we're hearing that, well, this is on the warrant register, and we don't know what we're paying for, it's already gone through all that, and we know that.
That is correct.
Okay. So thank you very much.
Thank you. So I'm going to segue and sort of piggyback on what Scott said. I am a lawyer. I do have a land use degree, and I do use that in making my analysis here. And just because Scott didn't, I do want to jump in and explain what's been happening in this lawsuit. We do put a lot of the pleadings on the city website, so if you want to follow along, you can. If you don't, you can go to the court's website. It's in Orange County Superior Court. You can see the entire docket for free as to what's been happening in the case. But in conjunction with the federal lawsuit, the plaintiffs, Emergency Shelter Coalition and others, filed a state action, which is what this deals with, complaining that we didn't follow CEQA, didn't comply with the Coastal Act, didn't comply with planning zoning laws. I feel very strongly that we did. I think in short order that we're going to get rulings that are favorable like the federal court action, but just real briefly, just so you folks know, they filed a motion for a preliminary injunction to shut our encampment down on an ex parte basis. We had to oppose that. They filed innumerable other procedural motions that cost an inordinate amount of money that were silly motions that were quickly denied by the court, but made us jump through a bunch of hoops and cost a bunch of money. That's why we're seeing this increase in the budget. I take great pride in looking at this stuff, using my own knowledge of what these things cost. My fees are actually much higher than Mr. Smith's. In making my analysis here and guiding the city and finding that happy medium of not spending frivolously taxpayer dollars, but at the same time defending lawsuits, I know that probably almost every one of you want us to defend, because as Scott said, if we just rolled over, there would be encampments everywhere, and there's absolutely zero that we could do to stop it. I just remind everyone that the federal lawsuit was filed last February. Before that, we had encampments everywhere. We had encampments in Marblehead, the coast, back in the canyons, everywhere. We enacted that ordinance to get a lot of those folks out of those areas, and we've done that, and we've been successful. Have there been growing pains? Absolutely, there have been growing pains, because it is a moving ball and situation at every step of the way, and Scott's not exaggerating when he says that they've thrown the absolute kitchen sink at us. But we won that federal lawsuit. I expect we're going to win the other ones. We've been successful. We're not going to roll over on the lawsuits. That's really all I have to say about that. I'm a little bit offended as well, because frankly, I get as many emails from Sea Summit complaining about the homeless that are back at North Beach and what are we going to do about it, as I do about shut down the camp. So you can't have it both ways. And all I can say is we're addressing the situation like every city in the country is trying to address it, and I think we're doing a lot better job than most. Not perfect, but a lot better job than most.
So Dan, I just want to comment. Well, first off, well said. The reason this is on the agenda is Kathy and I think 2 years ago, when we were seeing legal costs rising, we made a decision as a council to put individual line item expenses that were larger than normal on the consent, so we could have this exact discussion as a council and as a community. So I just want to commend staff on keeping track with that and bringing this forward as a separate line item.
So I'll move this item if there are no more comments.
Go ahead,
Okay,
Chris.
motion by me, second by Councilmember Ham. All in favor? Aye.
No.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Passes 3-1.
And, yes, but when we were searching for Susan Smith's card on M, we found that she turned in cards for items F and K that were with the homeless items. So, do you want to let her? I don't know when these cards came in.
They came in earlier when I turned them in before the session started, well, as the session started.
So we should probably open those items.
Probably, yeah. It's F and K.
So 6F. Smith.
Which item do we get to discuss first?
6F. The labor material bonds related to the Norway coastal development.
I watched the video that Chris Ham did when they opened up the Marblehead Coastal Trails. It was really amazing. I mean, it was beautiful. And the money that has been spent on this area is really just astounding. And it's been spent for the betterment of Southern California. In case you haven't done your research on the area, and either you have and you're just ignoring it, or I mean, we're just pretending that it doesn't exist. I'm not really sure. But Marblehead Coastal Preserve is a protected habitat. You've located the encampment right next door to a coastal preserve with endangered scrub plants and endangered animals. The scrub plants that exist in Marblehead Coastal Preserve, there's only 10% of that scrub left in the world. That scrub is where the endangered burrowing owls and the gnatcatchers live. Without that coastal scrub, they die. And right now, if you go into the trails, since Pico Park has been closed, over 50 man-made trails have been cut into the brush of the Marblehead Coastal Preserve. There are homeless sleeping in there. They have fire canisters, propane, drug paraphernalia, you name it. They're not only sleeping in the back of our homes,
Ms.
but they're
Smith, this is
also in
related
Marblehead.
to
Yes, it's
construction.
about Marblehead Coastal
Can you
Preserve.
tie it to the agenda item, please?
Yes, how about the millions of dollars spent on the water basins and the retention systems and back to the animals in that coastal preserve, because it's all related. If you add up all the costs, I mean, you're basically saying we're going to abuse the $2.6 million in assets that the city has for the preserve to place homeless people next door so we can destroy it. Who's liable for that? Who's liable for that money? Why are we going through all of this, spending money left, right, and center? The park, it's been closed, Marblehead. This money this money isn't for free. People are spending it, and people are going to want some answers and repercussions for the damage that has been done. And that's not going to stop. And the reason, why would you guys even think about locating a homeless camp, which you've all described as very destructive to areas, next to a habitat and preserve, where you've spent millions on water basins so that you can clean the area, so that the water goes to the ocean clean and it's not all dirty, and you put a bunch of homeless people in there where they can destroy the basins? If you walk down the waterway right outside the camp, how much vandalism has been done to those tunnels? You've invited them into the preserve. $2.6 million in city assets. Way to go.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Any discussion?
I have a question. Mr. Sun, do you have the knowledge of what organization is that manages the open space preserve? I can't remember the name.
It's a conservancy. I can't remember the specific name. I know we've reached out to them in terms of there was a concern or complaint forwarded by a citizen about 50 cut trails through there. They could not confirm that. They did confirm that there has been trash and other types of things that they've had to deal with a cleanup, but they have not been able to confirm 50 additional trails cut through.
And there's about 100 acres, I recall. Do they manage that and clean it?
Yes, that is correct.
And
as part of the conservancy,
repair it, and that's completely their cost?
That is correct.
Could you post their information, the contact information and names, so that people, at least maybe put a little information, background on who people should call when they see that?
Okay.
And make sure they stay on top of that. I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, I think that's actually still being finalized, if I'm not mistaken, the transfer over to the agency that's going to be stewarding that entire project. So hopefully we can get that done soon, and the city can accept that conservation easement.
Understood.
So do I need to renew my motion to move F or not? We reopened it, Joanne, do I have to do that
Yeah, let's
again?
make a new motion so we can be clean.
Okay, so I'll move item F to accept the, release the bonds, accept the performance.
So I'll second that motion. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Passes 4-0. So 6K, Ms. Smith?
I find it interesting that the Benito Canyon Park and Vista Bahia Park restroom replacements are on the agenda. Pico Park was closed. It's in the coastal zone. Everything in that zone is according to the Coastal Act. How is it that you guys have on the agenda that you can approve plans and specifications for restroom site improvements? Is this a procedure that has to be followed? I'm pretty sure it is. But for some reason, we have closed a permitted area to run an illegal, unpermitted area, which is destroying the area and creating a nuisance, creating endangerment to our homes, to our families. That camp is less than 100 feet away from the closest home. 100 feet. I am so disappointed that no notices have gone out. What is the reason for the Pico Park closure?
Ms. Smith, I'm going to ask you again to limit your comments to this agenda item, which
Well, it
deals
is
with
in regards to the
Benito-
agenda.
Benito
Well, I don't
Canyon Park
understand why
and
this
Vista
is on the
Bahia Park.
agenda. This is agendized, and the other park that's closed has never been agendized. It says it's closed for maintenance. Where's the agenda item? Why has it never been brought? What are the reasons for the closure of Pico Park? Is it that the homeless have destroyed the park and you've totally destroyed the park and it is a failed, unpermitted camp development, and that's why you haven't disclosed to the public
Ms.
and
Smith, I'm going to
followed
ask
the
you one more time
rules?
to please limit your comments to this agenda item.
Well, it is the agenda item.
If
It's
I-
a contract award for a
If
park.
I could help out, Mayor, this opportunity is to speak to things on the agenda, which the description clear, you're speaking to something that's not on the agenda.
Yes,
that's
and
the
it's a
difference.
problem because you've got a closed park that says it's for maintenance, it's closed for maintenance. And according to the city procedures, the way that it works is that whenever you have a park or a city public property and it has to undergo costs or maintenance, it's supposed to be agendized and brought before the city council. It's not something where you can just arbitrarily close the park for an undetermined amount of time and an undetermined amount of money. That's not the way it works. There's no procedures here. What are we, a rogue city?
Ms. Smith, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll move item K.
I'll second that. All in
There's
favor?
another card, though.
Oh.
Do we need to review our policy on speaking out of turn on items that don't exist on the?
No, I think we're just a reminder that, we cannot engage on items that are not on the agenda. So it doesn't behoove us or you to speak to those items because we can't engage you on them. If you'd like to speak to those items, you can do so at public comment at the end of this item, which is reserved an hour for that. So, Mr. Brown.
Yes, I'm here to talk about Agenda 6K, the bathrooms and the parks. For a matter of disclosure, I will talk about that subject only. For a matter of record, I'm on the Board of Directors of the Boys and Girls Club, of which one of those bathrooms is in that park. This has been a process that's been going on for a number of years through the normal SIP process that they're bringing it forward by contract. It was approved by the council and the general plan and the planning commission, us last May, when we approved the capital movement SIP program is consonant with the general plan and also by you. So this is coming through a normal process. Both those bathrooms, one of them, the one by the Little League Park, has been cited by the health department of the county. And B, the one by the Boys and Girls Club, we know the former chief of police, maybe this one will concur with that, because of its area, it's part of a gang-related situation where they use the bathroom because we can't secure it at night to use it for their initiations to the gang, where they take the kid in there and beat him up. And so the new bathroom, one, is needed for health purposes, and B, for safety for the neighborhood and the children, to try to do our crime prevention with gangs, and the one outside the Boys and Girls Club. So these two projects have come through the process, have been previously approved, and I encourage you to vote and support them tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Any other speaker cards? Joanne? Okay. Okay, so a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. That motion made by Councilmember Ward, seconded by Councilmember Ham.
The public hearing process includes a staff presentation, a presentation by the applicant not to exceed 10 minutes, and public testimony not to exceed 3 minutes per speaker. Following closure of the public hearing, the City Council will respond to questions raised during the hearing, discuss the issues, and act upon the matter by motion. The first public hearing is to consider invoicing property owners for their cost share of defective sidewalks repaired under the fiscal year 16 and 17 sidewalk repair program.
Tom, just real quick before you speak, I just want to remind folks who might have gotten here late that we have continued item 7C, public hearing item, to the next council meeting. Tom?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Bain and members of the City Council. Tom Vonnegut, Public Works Director. As the council is familiar, this is the last step in the process that we undertake under our sidewalk repair program. This public hearing is an opportunity for any property owners who wish to make comments or contest their assessment under the 50/50 cost sharing program. As I mentioned in the report, at the time of the report, all but one owner had already voluntarily paid their 50% share, and I do believe the final owner since then is already in a payment plan as well. So with that, that's my comments. I'm happy to answer any questions you have, and I recommend approval of the resolution.
Okay. So my question is, do we have any cards on it?
We do not, but the public hearing is still.
Okay.
Open the public hearing.
Okay.
Okay, seeing no cards.
one?
Nope.
So I'll just want to make a comment that notice was given to these owners way back in June, and I don't believe any of us have heard from any of them that they have any issues, and there's no one here tonight. So with that, I'll move that we adopt staff's recommendation.
I move that we adopt number ordinance 19-30 entitled Resolution of the City Council of the City of San Clemente, California, approving the property owner's share of costs for repairs performed in the fiscal year 2016 and fiscal year 2017 sidewalk repair program, project number 16355 and 27307, and authorizing the Finance Division to invoice those costs. That's it.
So a motion, second by
Second.
Councilmember Ward. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Passes 4-0. Thank you, Tom. Appreciate it.
Good job.
The next public hearing is for the presentation of the final sea level rise vulnerability assessment and consideration of a resolution authorizing submittal of the assessment to the California Coastal Commission.
Thanks, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council, Cecilia Gallardo-Daly, Community Development Director. We have here tonight Aaron Holloway from Moffett and Nickel, the coastal geologist who helped the city prepare the sea level rise vulnerability assessment, and our coastal land use program manager, Leslie Meyerhoff, to give the presentation. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. It's my pleasure to be here with you tonight. Cecilia covered the introduction, so we'll just jump right into the content here. We're reporting to you tonight on what is the culmination of a 2-year process that we initiated in fall of 2017 with the help of a Coastal Commission grant. The Sea Level Rise Vulnerability Assessment draft report was completed in July of this year, and we released that document for a 7-week public review and comment period. Most recently, we held 2 public meetings, one before the Planning Commission and one before the Coastal Advisory Committee, and both of those meetings were held in August of this year. The purpose of the Sea Level Rise Vulnerability Assessment is to begin the process of identifying assets and infrastructure and other resources at risk over the long term from sea level rise. We looked at things such as erosion of the beaches and the bluffs and flooding and inundation. We looked at various sea level rise scenarios, which you'll hear more about in just a minute. And really this is very much a long-term planning effort, and we looked at impacts to the city between now and the year 2100. And the goal is to take all the information that came out of the vulnerability assessment and to begin the process of preparing a coastal resiliency or adaptation plan to improve resiliency of the city in the long term. At this point, I'm going to turn the technical presentation over to Aaron Holloway.
Thank you, Leslie. Good evening. I'm going to give kind of an executive summary overview of the study. I know you have a copy in your packet. It's been posted publicly, and it's been discussed in several public meetings to this point. The scope of the assessment and the approach was outlined in some of these state documents, beginning with Safeguarding California, introduced the concept of a vulnerability assessment done at the city scale. It was further described in the Coastal Commission Sea Level Rise Policy Guidance about how to do the assessment to inform local coastal program updates and coastal development permits. And then the State of California Ocean Protection Council released their sea level rise guidance, which included projections for the amount of sea level rise under different scenarios. So it's funded partially by a Coastal Commission grant, and it's intended to support these long-term planning documents. The 3 steps are basically to identify the coastal hazards for a range of sea level rise scenarios, compare those with coastal resources to identify what's impacted, and come up with some of these planning tools to address and mitigate some of the impacts. Sea level rise is occurring. There's more and more evidence gathered through tide gauge measurements and satellite measurements that illustrate the rate of change has doubled to tripled over the last 20, 30 years relative to what it was this last century. So from 1901 to 1990, there was 4 to 5 inches of total sea level rise. We've already had 3 inches of sea level rise in the past 20 years. So the key questions of the assessment are to identify the hazards of concern and how sea level rise is going to affect those. And then what amount of sea level rise is really important. Where do those impact thresholds occur? What resources are at risk? And when could these scenarios happen, and how do we plan for them? So beach erosion is the primary concern. It's a chronic problem today. There's seasonal storm-related erosion events. They're exacerbated by droughts like we've been experiencing. There's a lack of sediment coming out of San Juan Creek. So it's really the erosion issue, I'm sure everybody is familiar with, is going to be kind of accelerated by sea level rise, and that is the primary hazard of concern. That will be most visible and impactful to coastal resources in San Clemente. The result will be this coastal squeeze effect. So the graphic on the bottom of the screen illustrates how we have kind of this fixed barrier along most of the city in the form of the railroad and the revetment, and as sea level rises, the dry beach and that intertidal habitat zone will be squeezed up against that barrier. And so eventually, with intermediate to advanced sea level rise, the dry beach areas intertidal habitat, and some of those other resources will be heavily impacted under these scenarios. The tools used to evaluate these hazards come from the USGS. They did regional studies, kind of county by county, for a range of sea level rise scenarios and storm events, and they provide hazard information for shoreline erosion and how much would be expected under each scenario. So those are the tools and the data we use. They're also publicly available if anybody would like to view them online. So our main conclusions were that any amount of sea level rise is going to matter. Given the erosion problems that the city and the region is facing today, any little bit of sea level rise is just going to exacerbate that, resulting in impacts to some of the beach recreation opportunities, the habitat, the public amenities like the restrooms and the access points. When we get 2 to 3 feet of sea level rise, that's going to result in a significant amount of beach loss to where almost the daily shoreline is up against that railroad corridor. Will be a significant threshold. Furthermore, the railroad's not high enough to tolerate that, so that'll be kind of a decision point for what the railroad is going to do to manage those hazards. And then a higher amount of sea level rise above 3 feet to 5 feet is where there's a significant landward movement of these coastal processes to where the bluff is in play, and then there'll be potentially bluff erosion hazards if that railroad is removed or relocated in the future. So this map illustrates kind of each of those scenarios. So the top one is about 0.8 feet of sea level rise, shows about half the beach is lost. In the Pier Bowl area, it's even more significant up at the North Beach zone, but it's largely impacting those resources seaward of the railroad. The next map down in the middle is about 3.3 feet of sea level rise to where that daily shoreline is up against the railroad corridor. So that would obviously result in significant impacts to the dry beach area and recreation opportunities, the coastal trail, and a variety of other resources. And then the bottom graph shows the 5-foot sea level rise scenario to where that daily shoreline is at or landward of the railroad and up against the bluff. And the bluff is obviously lined with a lot of residential development and other resources throughout the city, which would be exposed to those new hazards. And so when would these occur? The new guidance that came out from the state incorporated a probabilistic assessment. So they tried to capture all these variables that go into these climate change projections and sea level rise. And they come up with kind of this statistical representation of what could happen, during various time frames. And so the first one we looked at, the 0.8 foot sea level rise scenario, the likely range is that happens in 2040 to 2050, but there's a slight chance that happens as soon as 2030. And then going down to the next scenario, the 3.3 feet of sea level rise, the likely range for that is after, at the end of the century or beyond, 2100 to 2150. But there's a slight chance that it could occur in 2070. And then the 4.9 foot scenario is, the likely range is that doesn't happen until after 2100, but there is a slight chance that happens sooner in the 2080 time frame. So the further you go out in time, the larger the uncertainty gets around some of these scenarios. But given the magnitude of the impacts, it's important to kind of acknowledge that and understand when that could happen so that as we monitor some of these changes in science and sea level rise as it occurs, we can kind of adjust and course correct as needed. And so how do we plan for these? Well, the Coastal Resiliency Plan is in progress to identify what strategies could be implemented to mitigate some of these impacts. Capital improvement project planning can start to factor in some of these long-term hazards when it comes to making significant investments on some of these amenities or city structures in these hazard zones. The Corps of Engineers Storm Damage Reduction Project would be an excellent first step to kind of offsetting some of these erosion hazards. And then regional collaboration. There's a lot of stakeholders and neighboring cities and entities grasping or trying to figure out how to solve this solution and adjusting the best they can to the lack of sediment kind of entering the coastal system. So these are the activities going on now. I'm going to turn it back over to Leslie to talk about the next steps.
Thanks, Aaron. So the next phase of our work will focus on findings and recommendations of the vulnerability assessment. And some of the key takeaways from the study were that we need to study sea level rise. We need to actually see what's happening on the ground. We've got these model predictions and probabilities, but we need to see what's actually happening with respect to sea level rise. And so we'll be looking at tide gauges locally, and we'll be looking at shoreline profile data that will indicate where we are on the sea level rise trajectory and when we need to begin implementing some of the measures. We also know that the probabilities range from 0.5% to 60%. The science and projections continue to evolve. They're getting better. And so we know that this study is not going to be a static study that sits on a shelf. It will need to be periodically updated. And the next phase now is to move into the Coastal Resiliency Plan phase. As Aaron indicated, we are working on a draft report. We'll be presenting that back to you sometime in the spring of 2020. It will identify a range of solutions and options for the city. Think of it as a toolbox. There'll be a menu of options, policies, programs, and projects to implement, including things like the beach nourishment program you're working on, the 50-year Army Corps project, keeping the winter storm berm program in place. And really the idea here is to keep all the tools in the toolbox so you're not tying your hands unnecessarily.
Leslie, before you go on, I'm just
Yes.
going to ask the Mayor Pro Tem, do we have any speaker cards on this item?
I don't have any in front of me. Do we have?
Perfect. So I'm going to ask that we hear from the public. You have a very great report prepared here in 200 pages in my book, and anybody who'd like to read it can feel free to do so. I would love to hear what the public has to say on this item.
Any objection to that?
No.
Yep.
Open the public hearing, but I don't have any cards.
We need, have you filled out a card?
Fill them out for general comment.
But they're for this item?
Yes, they are.
Okay, so do you want to come up and just give me your name and then we'll pull your card? So I'll open the public hearing.
My name is Mandy Sackett, and we have some handouts. That's all right. Okay, we're good to go. So hi, my name is Mandy Sackett with Surfrider Foundation. You should have our handouts now in front of you to follow along. Apologies to the audience, we didn't have our PowerPoint. So today we just like to present some general comments on sea level rise and the associated pending impacts that our response to it may have on our coastline. We do appreciate the city's thorough vulnerability assessment. We did submit a comment letter on it, and we hope that you've had time to review that. We're glad that the city is taking the first step in sea level rise planning here. Tonight, we do just want to sort of set the stage as far as next steps and make our recommendations as to what we'd like to see the city plan for with sea level rise, and emphasize really the need for long-term regional planning as sort of the next steps. So on the second page there, if you'd like to follow along. So I'm Surfrider's policy coordinator, and I work on sea level rise planning and local coastal programs all across the state, but I'm a San Clemente resident, so this is very close to home and dear to me because I live here, I own a condo here. One day, you know, if I ever find a partner, I would like to raise a family here. I want future generations to be able to enjoy sandy beaches, fun waves, bonfires in San Clemente. I want our beach culture to survive and not, you know, die, and with our local economy along with it. And I think that's it's really, really serious dire impacts that this report showed. So, and 2 to 3 feet could happen in our lifetime, as we've heard. So, okay, and then so on the third page there, beach nourishment is of course an option, but it's a temporary short-term solution. It's extremely costly. You know, we've spent several $1 million before, and it washes away very quickly. So I think that relying on this, it should be seen as a very short-term solution, and we really need to think broader. And I'm going to skip ahead since I'm a little low on time. So on the next page, fourth page there, so one option for the city is to consider and evaluate the possibility of living shorelines, sort of more natural processes. When we couple those with sort of relining, restructuring, moving structures out of harm's way, it can be very effective. There might be locations on our beaches where we could do like vegetated dune habitats, maybe construct cobbled berms or mattresses, place sand on top. It lasts a lot longer than just plain sand nourishment. It might be a really good intermediate sort of adaptations response. So we really hope that Moffett and Nickel will be able to take a look at those kind of possibilities. They might be a little more expensive up front, but in the long term, rather than just going to sand nourishment, it could be more cost effective. So we'll look at that. And the photos on the slide there of Ventura at Surfers Point, where they did a project like that, where they did a more comprehensive sort of living shoreline approach. So I will hand it over to Denise.
Thank you, Andy. Hi, Denise.
Hi, how are you?
Well,
Thank you,
welcome.
council members. Denise Serkineff, I'm with the Surfriders South Orange County chapter, and I'm also appointed on your peer bacteria study group, which is woohoo, yay. Excited to roll up my sleeves on that. Following on with Mandy's comments, our fear is that San Clemente may rely on short-term solutions rather than long-term planning. There are several major issues that need to be addressed in order to save San Clemente's beaches from sea level rise. We can't save our beaches if your only response to sea level rise is to armor and protect the shorefront infrastructure. And we know that seawalls exacerbate erosion. First, we need to proactively engage in a regional approach, as Moffett and Nickel and your advisors have advised you, that will relocate the railway inland. Hopefully, you'll be looking at that in the short term, and remove the existing shoreline armoring as part of a long-term planning process. If we don't begin the process now, it'll never happen in time to save the beaches. The city must engage with the county and other local jurisdictions, and also with Caltrans and the other relevant agencies, to really devise a plan that's going to move the railway inland. And it may sound implausible, but it's not. On your picture number 7 in the docket, the Railroad Authority is already looking at relocation options down in Del Mar, where the bluffs have become severely unstable. Also, the city of San Francisco passed a plan last year to relocate their Great Highway up north, which is the equivalent of PCH down here, to move it inland in order to accommodate sea level rise and to give room for Ocean Beach to move back, to migrate inland. These options are feasible, but we need to take a more serious and collaborative look at them, so now that in decades from now, when we really have no beaches left, we are prepared and our plans are in motion. And I'm going to turn over to Brad Thompson, who is a San Clemente resident, and he is on our executive committee with Surfriders South Orange County chapter.
Great, thanks, Denise.
Hey,
Mr. Thompson.
Brad Thompson, San Clemente resident, with Surfrider Foundation Executive Committee in South Orange County. To continue on what they've said, the issue is that seawalls exacerbate erosion, and they make it difficult for sand to settle in front of them, and instead it's washed away or washed down shore. The focus should be on allowing our beaches space to migrate inland and restoring natural shoreline processes. Seawalls drown beaches, as you can see here, in Goleta Beach on page 8 there, and Santa Barbara, and as we know well, already along San Clemente's coastline. We also know that historically, the sand on San Clemente's beaches came from inland, and our waterways flush sediment out with each rain. Now that our waterways are channelized and Dana Point Harbor also blocks the sediment flow, our beaches are starved for sediment. Restoring our waterways as much as possible and identifying opportunistic ways to get sediment that otherwise would be flushed out to sea should also be a high priority for long-term regional working groups. We suggested as part of the city's sea level rise adaptation plan, they commit to helping to build and participate in a regional sea level rise working group that can lay out a vision for saving South Orange County's beaches. Thank you all for your time today.
Mr. Thompson. Any other cards? No.
Okay, I'm going to move that we adopt resolution.
Close the public hearing.
We still have a presentation to finish.
Yeah.
Okay, I'd love to see the rest of your presentation since you prepared it.
Okay, thank you. Just to recap here, this is the 2-year rolled-up summary of all the milestones we've accomplished. This is our final public meeting. We are recommending that you adopt a resolution allowing city staff to submit the final sea level rise vulnerability assessment to the Coastal Commission as the final grant deliverable. And that concludes the staff presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Very well done.
Really quickly,
Thank
I
you.
wanted to say you guys did a phenomenal job with this, and
Thank you.
appreciate it. It was very thorough, and it's a lot of reading. So.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Want to continue with your motion?
All right, so I'll make a motion and adopt staff recommendation to adopt resolution number 19-41 entitled a resolution of the City Council of the City of San Clemente, California, authorizing staff to submit the final sea level rise vulnerability assessment to the California Coastal Commission. Okay, so motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Passes 4-0.
The next public hearing was continued earlier in the meeting. That was the zoning amendment related to regulations for secondhand dealers. Was it your intention to continue the public hearing to November 19th, 2019?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Then the next item. Next item is adoption of the 2019 California Building and Fire Codes and local amendments.
So before we hear from staff on this one, if there's no comments or cards, I'm going to make a recommendation.
I agree on the recommendation, but I think that our chief building official should at least announce that these are the new codes coming up. And why didn't you bring all the books so that we could see all the changes?
Well, there's 13 books.
Okay.
So we did bring one if you need an illustration.
Okay. With that, I'll move that we introduce ordinance number 1683 entitled ordinance to the City Council of the City of San Clemente,
We do have to
California.
open a public hearing.
Yes.
Closed. Want to close it?
No.
Okay, I'll continue reading. City of San Clemente, California, amending title, chapter 15, 15.08, 15.12, 15.16, 15.20, 15.22, 15.23, and title, chapter 8, 8.16 of the San Clemente Municipal Code, and adding to title, chapters 15, 1.15.05, 15.11, 15.14, 15.17, 15.18, adopting by reference the 2019 California Building Standards Code, California Code of Regulations, Title 24, consisting of part of the 2019 Administrative Code, the 2019 California Building Code, the 2019 California Residential Code, the 2019 California Electrical Code, the 2019 California Mechanical Code, the 2019 California Plumbing Code, the 2019 California Fire Code, the 2019 California Green Building Standard Code, the 2019 California Administrative Code, the 2019 California Energy Code, the 2019 California Historical Building Code, the 2019 California Existing Building Code, and the 2019 California Reference Standards Code, together with certain additions, amendments, and deletions.
So motion?
I'll second that.
Okay, motion and second.
Thank you for reading that for me.
And you've been a very busy man, and we want to thank staff for all of this, the work too, because we know it's a lot to update this when it comes around.
Yeah, just very briefly, can you explain just to the public, this is required by state law, so these are updates.
Yeah, whether we do anything or not, the 2019 California Building Codes will go into effect January 1. This gives us an opportunity to amend them. Tim Kerbrad from OCFA is also here tonight to support the fire code portion of it. They provide the amendments for the fire code.
Great, so public probably sees we're moving very quickly on this, but it's required by state law, so really not much.
No, it's just our amendments and our administrative elements that we have in the municipal code we're amending, along with the fire code.
To conform to state law.
Exactly. Yep.
And if I may, Mayor Pro Tem Bain, looks like you prepared a presentation that probably highlights, what the changes are. Could we put that on the website by chance?
Yes, we could.
That'd be great, since we
This
didn't
will
get to
give
see
an
that.
opportunity for the public to see it. We'll have a public hearing December 3rd, and then actually have a public hearing where we can discuss any changes that might happen.
Okay.
If the public gets a chance to review it the next 4
That'd
weeks.
be great. Do you know where it might be on the website? Would it be under building, if they clicked on the building?
It's under, right now it's on the agenda, but we'll move it into building where it's a little, it's
Okay, that'd be
easier
very
to
helpful.
access.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have a motion and second, all in favor? Aye. Passes 4-0.
Next item is public hearing to consider establishing a processing fee for sidewalk vending permits.
So much like the last one, this was required upon us and set forth by the state. So if there's no spirit cards, and after we open and close the public hearing, no questions regarding what's required of us, we make a motion.
So I'll open that public hearing. Any comments, Joanne? I'll close the public hearing.
Okay. With that, I move that we adopt resolution number 19-42 entitled Resolution of the City Council of the City of San Clemente, California, establishing fees for the processing of sidewalk vending permits and related renewals.
Okay, I'll second that motion. A motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Passes 4-0.
8A, the update to commissions and committees, was also continued, and I think you meant to November 19th. Okay. Report from the Public Works Director concerning an update on the San Clemente Summer Trolley Program.
Evening, Mayor Pro Tem Bain and members of the council. Tom Bonnick, Public Works Director. So the item is an update on the trolley program. I won't repeat all the details. I know you've read it. I just want to highlight staff does recommend your approval of the several recommendations to make some changes to the trolley stops, recognizing that one of those recommendations will bring staff back to your council for final consideration because that may involve some parking restrictions. And then also, hot off the press, there was a workshop this afternoon at OCTA regarding the next Project V call for applications. And so now, based on that and some of the reasons I outlined in the report, staff recommends your direction to prepare a grant application to extend the very successful downtown trolley. If approved by OCTA, that would provide 5 more years of generally 90% funding, which would be a great windfall. And along with that application, we will recommend purchasing 1 more trolley vehicle to address the issue that I mentioned in the report. There will be a future grant call under this program, again, probably within 2 years, and at that time, staff would recommend then we take a look at a potential southern extension once we have some more operating experience with the Dana Point connection to make sure that's successful and we iron out any ridership issues. And that concludes my presentation.
Great. And we have 1 public comment. Thank you, Tom. Very much appreciate it. Mr. McGuire?
Wow. Good evening, Mark McGuire, City of San Clemente. I can tell we're on an expedited schedule here tonight, so I will take 1.5 minutes, which is, I think this is fantastic news about getting another trolley for the downtown. In the staff report, it said that there are times where the trolley is so full that they can't take all the passengers, which really frustrates the purpose. If everyone can get on and people feel like it's an efficient trolley, then it's going to get used more and more. So that, to add another trolley would be fantastic. And then to get that funding is also fantastic. I try to take every 3 minutes I can to talk about how I think eventually we are going to have to start funding. Even 10% is a sizable amount of money. But if we get weaned off of a grant from OCTA to find sources of revenue to fund this, and I think one is in lieu parking fees for those who can't find parking on site in their developments in the Pier Bowl or the T-zone, and I'll come back and talk about that in connection with the Pier Bowl specific plan. So with that, thank you.
Great, thank you, Mark. Councilwoman Ferguson? No?
So I have a quick question to staff, very quickly. Tom, I read it that the parking issues were going to be in the city of Dana Point. Is any of the parking issues on the future move of the stop, is that in our city?
Yes. The stops that are recommended on Camino Capistrano near Via Breve, did I say?
Via Breve.
That's within the city of San Clemente, and that may require a few parking spaces to be taken out, but we will come back and analyze that in more detail and get your approval of a resolution to do that.
And before I move for approval, I really want staff to, on special event days, we've got to get the word out to where people aren't just using the trolley and they're using our buses. Because I've heard our special event buses, they are almost empty because people are using the trolley. And I don't know if it's the novelty of it or what, but those are very small and the buses have worked great in the past, so.
Right, and we will definitely continue closer coordination with the event sponsors to see how we can make that work, but we may always run into that issue that if we're using some of the same pickup locations, the trolley is the fun toy to ride as opposed to a school bus, but we will do our best to make that happen.
Okay. All right, that was my only comment.
Okay, so I'll make a recommendation. Before I do that, I just want to get some head nods from the rest of the council. 2 parts. One, that in the future, if we can, it sounds like we're not going to go south of the trolley, but go inland towards Talega and the ranch lands. If possible, so I'm not giving direction, but just if it's feasible for staff. And the second one is to move forward with the private parties for the trolleys. So bring that back at some point, because that was also included.
Agreed.
Sounds like I got nods from.
Sure.
Nodding to that.
But we're not agreeing to it.
No, of course not. Just that we're still, in theory, we agree with those motions. So.
And we will bring details for your consideration.
Perfect.
Yeah, and I wanted to just say I went with Tom to OCTA's sort of meeting with a bunch of the South County folks, and we got to brag on the success of the trolley program, which is hugely successful, and a lot of the other cities were taking note. So thanks staff for the work there, and it's just a phenomenal program. So Appreciate it.
Great, thank you.
With that, I move that we approve the deletion of the trolley stop 20, the northern blue line, which would establish existing trolley stop 19 as the transfer junction with the City of Dana Point trolley. To approve a minor location adjustment, trolley stop 21, to relocate this trolley stop north of the intersection of Cuna Capistrano and Cuna Maricosa. The location be confirmed with the City of Dana Point. 3, direct staff to prepare a report for City Council consideration establishing new trolley stops at Cuna Capistrano in the vicinity of the Via Breve. 4, that we direct staff that we're still interested in pursuing grant funding to include the ranch areas of the city for the trolley program in the future if possible. And 2, to bring back a report for discussion of private trolley rentals.
Great, I'll second that. Motion and second, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes 4-0. So just a point of order, Scott, we don't need to read staff recommendations for non-resolutions.
No, just you can just move the
Just trying to
recommended
save
action
you.
except for.
Thank you.
yeah.
You're doing a great job.
Okay.
I got so enthralled with that last one.
Yeah. So Tom, are you doing item B?
I am.
Do we have any cards on this?
We do not.
Okay. So it was really interesting. We asked you to do this, and it looks like most of the street does not want the parking permit.
That's correct. We only got about a 50%. For quick background, this was the direction from May to consider a preferred parking program on West Avenida San Gabriel. In the process of following out your direction, we did send a survey to the 24 residents. We got 11 responses. 8 of the 11 said don't do anything. And generally the theme was, from the comments we got, hey, it's really not a big issue, and by the way, we think the event center has been doing a better job, and so it's just not a problem. So given that feedback, we're looking for direction. It doesn't seem like the neighborhood is wanting it at this time, and we'll be looking for direction if we should just table it.
So I'll make a motion to table it.
Yeah, why are we shouldn't move forward if they're not going to participate.
So motion and second. I think I heard Council Member Ham first. So motion second. All in favor?
Aye. Thank you for your work on it.
4-0 to table. Thanks, Tom.
Great, thank you.
Who knew?
Okay.
All right.
And oral communications. Do you have some comments?
All right. So first is Brad Malamud, followed by Brenda Wells, Jack O'Keefe. Okay, 0 for 3. Keep those aside just in case they come back in. Is it David Ping? 0 for 4. Jeff Perkin. Mr. Perkins still here? And then Laura Fisher. Hi, Laura.
Wow, that happened quicker than I expected. So I know you guys have been paying a lot of attention to the small cell wireless issue, and I just wanted to speak tonight to keep it alive, and I don't have too much prepared really. I just wanted to comment on what has been repeated multiple times about how you guys aren't allowed to consider health impacts by the FCC. And I just wanted people to, just the general public, to be able to take that into consideration, what that means really, that we aren't allowed to consider health impacts. What does that mean for our system as a whole? What does that mean for what you guys are doing? It's a very serious issue, I would say, that, and it's also just kind of a blatant, if they're trying to tell us that we can't take health impacts into consideration, that means that they know that it impacts our health. They know that. And the reason that they know that is that they paid for a 10-year, $30 million study through the National Toxicology Program that studied 2G and 3G. And the results were that they found that radio frequency radiation causes cancerous tumors. And they haven't, as far as I know, done studies on 4G and 5G, but why would they when they already know that 2G and 3G cause cancerous tumors? So I would just encourage you guys to be leaders and to get as many people as we can behind you, just like Encinitas has. They had about 200 people show up to their study meeting. We need to get as many people as we can to the meetings on November 19th and November 20th because there's a serious problem in what is happening in this country. Harvard University has said that the FCC is a captured agency, and they've demonstrated it with the report. So at the local level, we got to figure out what we can do, and I encourage you to, at the 20th meeting, to educate us not only on what you can't do,
Mr. Perkins,
but what you can, like,
appreciate it.
Empower us to move forward.
Ms. Fisher, and then George Gregory. And just real quick, Ms. Fisher, before you speak, Scott, she's going to be speaking on the Veracruz Reserve item. Do I need to step down from the dais for this, given that it's not an agendized item? She's going to be speaking public comment to
on
the wireless.
Veracruz, yeah, on that area, thank you, yeah. Just to indicate that Mr. Bain's firm counts the HOA in the reserve as their client, so that's why he's stepping out.
Good evening. I'm Laura Fisher, representing Safe Cell Sites for SC. This is a picture from my daughter's bedroom window, 58 feet from one of the appealed cell sites. We wanted to make the city aware that AT&T started the underground work for the 2 cell sites under appeal this summer. In July, an encroachment permit was pulled for minor work within the right-of-way on Camino Veracruz outside the reserve, but the address was listed differently. The handhold pictured here from the application was installed, and we wonder why AT&T continues to fight for this site and not others. They've already started the work. The scenario is the same at the other appealed site on Calle del Cerro. We are also requesting that the city please pay close attention to the height of the 2 cell sites under appeal. City's conclusion of consistent in character and similar in height to other streetlights and traffic light poles and not visually dominant feature needs to be challenged. Aesthetically obtrusive needs to serve as a proxy for decrease in property values and not potential health effects. 2 sites under appeal should be rejected based on height aesthetics. Here's a picture of the application, which is similar to both sites. There's a 19% height increase from the top of the existing pole to the top of the antenna. This measures 5 foot 6 inches. The permit analysis stated only a 4 foot 2 inch height increase, which is 14%. AT&T states the height increase is 5 foot 6 inches, as in the drawing, which is 19%. The city's new small cell draft ordinance repeatedly limits the height increase to 10%. The AT&T representative asked for up to a 6 feet height increase during the design review committee meeting. Why is a 19% increase okay for the appealed sites, but in the future we specify only 10%? The 2 permits under appeal need to be rejected based on the height increase being considered aesthetically different. Additionally, our group requests that the city consider using an attorney that specializes in telecom representing cities, not industry, to advise on our small wireless facilities ordinance, such as the legal counsel that Encinitas has procured. Thank you.
Mr. Gregory?
If I may make a comment. The November 20th date that both of our speakers have referred to is a workshop the city's having at 5 p.m. Here in the council chambers. It precedes the Planning Commission meeting, and the city manager has posted the draft ordinance so that there'll be a productive dialogue so people can see what the city's put together prior to that workshop. Thank you.
Mr. Gregory?
Hi there, George Gregory, North Beach, still a criminal. We're putting on a bike drive again. This will be the 9th annual Boys and Girls Bicycle Drive for Christmas. It's a very nice charity. I cannot believe growing up without a bicycle is conducive to childhood. Maybe want to hand out a few of those. 2 weeks ago, I had a little rally for homeless issues at Pico Park. Looking for ideas, looking for comments. Comments were many. Vote for Bernie, he'll fix it. I thought that was the best one. Pray. Well, good intentions, but it's not going to help much. Irony by the homeless themselves. I wouldn't put up with it either. We have a problem with the abandoned property, the camping here and there, and everything. The sanctuary lot worked wonderfully. It was a very compassionate thing. Obviously, it got overused because other municipalities didn't participate, and the homeless network just overused it. So now we got them back at the train station and places like that. And of course, because they have the right, they're going to take the best, and that is the best. Believe me, that's a nice landing, it's a nice place to watch the sunset. They're taking the best, and they're abandoning their property and destroying the place. So the thing is the sanctuary lot was the key to fixing this, and it worked wonderfully for a short time. So where can we put another sanctuary lot? Maybe the county landfill. Nobody lives around it. It's not going to bother anybody. It's clean, it's decent. You know, when they start another layer of landfill, they could move them off to the other side or this side, and it's not a bad idea to put them at the county landfill. Okay, let's face it, right now we're fighting over a dirt lot by the water reclamation place. These aren't great places, but it gives them sanctuary, and hopefully they can figure out what they're going to do with their lives or not. You know, let's face it, these guys are a problem. The best idea, though, is putting a time limit on some stuff. When the Little League takes the field, they play their game and they have to leave. Why? Because there's another team wanting to play. When I park to go to the restaurant, I park for 2 hours and I better leave or I'm going to get a ticket. Why? Because somebody else wants to go to the restaurants or shops. So the thing is the time limit's very fair. This would also solve the abandoned property. Okay? I saw you here this morning, and you're still here this afternoon, Mr. Homeless Person. You need to move on. And by the way, you can't abandon your property. Nobody's around to claim the property. We gather it up and dispose of it properly. So a time limit is a very good idea. So I would like you guys to consider that and the new sanctuary lot.
Thank you, Mr. Gregory.
Thank you.
So I'm going to run through these cards one last time to see if our other speakers are still here. I do not see them. So we're going to close oral communications.
Would you like to do the TCA report at this time or farther back?
It's fine.
Okay, one card.
Okay. Ryan Bork? Lost him as well. All right. Scott, you want to give an update on what happened at the last hearing?
Yeah, thanks. The City Council asked us to participate in a meeting at Orange County Transit Authority where OCTA considered for the first time the TCA's South County Mobility Plan. We'd sent a letter ahead of time that took issue well, that affirmed and agreed with many points made in the OCA staff report. First and foremost, that there are many elements of the TCA's mobility plan that are beyond its authority to effectuate. Most significantly, OCTA has planned HOV lanes. Those are just traditional open carpool lanes on Interstate 5, including through San Clemente. TCA's plan contradicts and conflicts with OCTA's HOV plans because it contemplates potentially closed tolled lanes in lieu of those HOV lanes. So OCTA and we, in affirmation, question the ability of whether TCA and Caltrans have the ability to take those open public HOV lanes and substitute them with paid toll lanes, depriving our residents of the benefit of Measure M taxes that we pay, that would pay for those open HOV lanes. There are several points of conflict in TCA's proposed alternatives with OCTA. Most notably is the conflict with the implementation of Los Patrones Road from Oso Parkway to our direction through the ranch as an open county arterial. One alternative that TCA is considering would have the open portion of Los Patrones closed and subject to tolls, with the extension towards San Clemente also being tolled. That conflicts with the county's master plan of arterial highways and the city of San Juan's and the city of San Clemente circulation elements. So we were heartened that the OCTA board seemed to recognize those conflicts. They asked that they be addressed and sent their staff back to put their heads together with TCA to figure out how to work those out and how to consolidate those inconsistencies. Councilmember Ward was in attendance too. She was able to comment. She might be able to add, but it was good to see some of our objections get traction in the staff report, and then also again with the board deliberations when they considered them.
Great, and one other, the hearing I actually was talking about, thank you for talking about OCTA, was the demurrer hearing, which I think is.
That was another hearing. Yeah, thank you.
And then before you go there, just one final thing. We've heard a lot
OCTA.
about, your firm and legal fees and all that, and I don't know if you're comfortable sharing it, but would you be willing to volunteer what your firm has expended in contingent time towards the toll road effort so that the public is aware of that as well?
Yeah, thanks for asking about that, because that gets overlooked and misrepresented sometimes. Our firm, at the beginning of this lawsuit, my partners agreed to shoulder the risk of that lawsuit and to not charge the city for fees except for the first $100,000. As it progresses to hearing, we're subject to the risk of a recovery of fees or not, depending on how we do there. I haven't looked at our invoices for this month, but last month, I think this month they'll exceed $1 million. Last month, we were carrying $960,000 in fees that we'd committed to this without the ability to receive those from the city, so thanks for that. Our latest success, you mentioned, I'm sorry, I heard meeting and you said hearing. We had brought, at the city's behest, a challenge to TCA's developer impact fees. Several $1,000s are charged on each single-family home and even more on commercial development in the city of San Clemente that were supposed to go towards completion of a beltway around us that TCA has canceled for all intents and purposes. And so we brought a lawsuit alleging that the cancellation of that and their continued collection of fees for a freeway they're not going to build violates the state's mitigation fee impact statute. And TCA had taken the position that the city didn't have standing to seek that redress. We argued that, yes, we do have standing, because if the city fails to collect those fees from stakeholders in town, then we're subject to an audit and a lawsuit by TCA. The court agreed with our position in that and allowed our challenge to TCA's development impact fees to go forward. So we were happy about that. The hearing's coming up rapidly. The judge in that check-in the week before last indicated that he's fully prepared and ready to go for the hearing on the larger motion that will be heard in Riverside mid-December.
Great, thank you.
May I have a quick question regarding the contingency contract? I know it's 90,000 contingency cap, but you mentioned $1 million has been spent so far by the city on the lawsuit?
No, the city hasn't spent that. My partners have.
Your partners have.
That's
so 90,000 cap. What are the additional fees that we see? Is that for?
The additional fees are for experts and costs. We do work relating to the toll roads that aren't part of that case.
Okay.
So if we're not appearing in the case or writing briefs, and those are charged as normal services to the city.
Could you provide a total for that, perhaps,
Yeah,
once you get around to it?
Sure. It's in a chart that we've provided you to take, council member, at your request, but we'll send it out to everybody so it's
in
clear.
this chart?
No, it's in the FedEx package.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
I didn't see that in the FedEx package. I didn't have a chart in mine. I had just 2 pages.
Sure.
For
we'll find that.
Closed session. That'd be great. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Great. So homeless update. We have speaker cards. Okay. Ryan Bork, I believe, is not here. Steve Allman. Mr. Allman. Jenny Dowdall. Is that correct? I messed up your name, I apologize. And then Dave Patty.
Good evening. My name is Steve Allman. I'm a resident of Sea Summit. Shortly after the emergency ordinance was put in place by the city for this homeless camp, I wrote a letter to the Coastal Commission, about an 8-page letter, and based on their code regulations, it was clear to me that this homeless camp was an unpermitted facility. I'm pleased to learn that the Coastal Commission at this point has put the city on notice that in fact they believe that this is an unpermitted facility, a coastal development, and requires a coastal development application. The use of the city lot for a homeless camp is now expanded into the Pico Park and the Natural Preserve. The homeless have campfires, they smoke, they create trash, they are in essence living and occupying the Natural Preserve. And it's only a matter of time before we have a fire. The preserve is continuing to be degraded and damaged. This homeless development needs to be moved and it needs to be shut down. It's in the wrong place. It was a bad decision. We need to see active steps to have this relocated, and the city council needs to follow through with their commitment that this is a temporary facility. In my asking around and seeking information, I'm not getting the impression that much else is being done. And if it is going to be relocated, it's going to be a feat to relocate it. It's going to take effort, money, time, and I'm just not seeing that. So the city has the SP2 zone. You designated that zone for a reason. It was designated for homeless shelter, and yet you totally ignore that. In the dark of night, you create this ordinance and you put it in a location that is simply the wrong location. So I'm here to ask that you shut this facility down in the next 30 days and that you take active steps to relocate these people. Thank you.
Thank you. Jenny, followed by Dave Patty, and then Sherry Nolan.
Good evening, council members. I am also a resident of a Sea Summit neighborhood, and for more than 5 months, we have waited patiently while the city of San Clemente has attempted to address its share of the homeless crisis. The temporary solution that you enacted back in May relocated and concentrated the crisis and all the problems associated with the homelessness across the street from our community. It soon spread into Pico Park and into and throughout the coastal preserve, and quite literally to our doorsteps. You placed an encampment in a major thoroughfare for schools, businesses, neighborhoods, preserve land, and the beach. The coastal preserve has turned into a large campground, enabling encampments and illegal activity to be hidden. Majority of these campers are not San Clemente residents and do not want rules. The damage to the coastal preserve has been well documented by Sea Summit owners and the biologist from JK Consulting, who has cared for the preserve for the past 14 years. I'm here tonight to ask that the Pico homeless encampment be closed within 30 days. This encampment of yours may have been dipped in good intentions, but it has failed tremendously. This week you saw pictures of harm being caused. We have found flammable materials, including propane tanks, in the coastal preserve, which is threatening our homes, our safety, and neighboring businesses. You also received a disturbing picture of a homeless encampment in the backyard of our neighbor. The pictures show personal belongings, bedding, and drug paraphernalia. 3 young children reside in that home. But there are pictures I cannot show you tonight, or this week or next week. Those are pictures and those are moments of which our children, my child, is being stripped of innocent thinking. He has been exposed to drug paraphernalia, the scent of drugs, fighting, indecent exposure, aggressive yelling, and profanity towards him. He is 5 years old. But I will add, he does like seeing the police and the sirens and the lights. I mean, what child doesn't like seeing our superheroes protect us? You promised us this was temporary. You promised us you would explore other options. We agreed to be patient, but our patience is running out. In all due respect, Mr. Smith, you are wrong. There are dozens and dozens of encampments. I encourage you to take a sunset stroll or maybe meet me for coffee in the morning and walk through our neighborhood and into our coastal paths, because I can't even go alone anymore. By letter dated October 15, 2019, the Coastal Commission has informed you that your encampment was created in violation of the Coastal Act, which means daily fines could be accruing, yet I see nothing on today's agenda to address the situation. What started as a creative and temporary solution is no longer providing benefit to the city or its residents, and rather is creating ever-increasing exposure and potentially huge liability for our city. Our health and safety, our homes, our children have been placed at considerable risk by your decision. I'm here tonight to ask the Pico encampment to be closed in 30 days.
Thank you, Jenny. Next is Dave Patty, followed by Sherry Nolan, and then Susan Smith.
I'm Dave Patty. I'm also a resident of Sea Summit. I won't belabor all the points that the previous 2 speakers raised, but I would like to say a few things. When we met initially and talked about the establishment of this camp, we were told it'd be temporary. At the outset, it seemed to accomplish what the city was trying to do, and that was to centralize the problem and get the homeless issue away from North Beach and in one location. Unfortunately, that brought a lot of problems to Sea Summit, which you know and have heard about. And as it turns out, a lot of the homeless that were in the encampment have now matriculated back to North Beach. But more importantly, now we have these life safety issues that I think are occurring because of the trespassing into the habitat area. All these fire elements in the height of fire season, real problem. And if you walk around the perimeter of the communities, you'll see slope with vegetation in some areas that's within 100 feet of the housing structures, which I think probably is in violation of the fuel mod zone setbacks. I'm not sure how the overlay of those would apply to a habitat area like this, which is controlled by another state agency, but I do intend to go talk to OCFA about it and see if there's anything that can be done, because they did go in and clear a lot of the slope areas about 50 feet back, and then they left others untouched, so I'm not sure. But that said, we said this would be temporary, realize there are lots of issues, lots of things going on, but doesn't appear to be a solution, and it looks like we're just hoping for something to happen. We would like you guys to, stick with your promise and try to come up with a solution so that we can put an end to this sooner rather than later.
Next is Sherry Nolan, followed by Susan Smith.
Good evening, Council. My name is Sherry Nolan. I live at Sea Summit. I happen to live right across the street from the encampment, and I'm here to reiterate what my neighbors have already said, and hopefully get this closed down within 30 days. It's been 5 months already. The encampment has spread to the park. They've closed that up, the trails, even the homes. There's somebody most recently that was found in the backyard of a home. They're cooking with propane. It's a fire hazard to not only our homes, our safety, the habitat, and the preserve area. I'm here to ask that you close it down quickly, within 30 days, and clean those 2 lots up. I mean, it's just a disgrace. And I'd like you to really work on finding an alternative lot and an answer to this problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Susan Smith?
Sherry, I'm really glad you brought up that junkyard across the street. Are we permitted for that? I mean, how much junk and trash are you guys going to put over there? How many bathrooms are over there? How many trash cans are over there? Environmentally sensitive area right next door, right down that slope. I mean, it's right there. But the Coastal Commission issued a letter dated October 15th. It said that they have found that you were in violation of the Coastal Act. Well, the city of San Clemente, thanks to the poor decisions that have been made to create this encampment. I know it was something where we were trying to fix a problem. Unfortunately, it has been exacerbated, and it is a created endangerment. It is a failed logic to say that you're going to protect the rest of the city while putting a community in high danger. Like, not just from fire, but every day we have to worry about somebody coming into our homes. So, number one, I'd like to know if you guys plan on agendizing the Coastal Commission, because you have until December 15th to file an application. You had until the 15th to let them know that you were shutting down the camp. I haven't seen anything on the agenda. I'm guessing that you have not, you've closed Pico Park, so I'm guessing you've chosen to close the permitted site rather than the unpermitted site. So I'd like to request, as my neighbors, we are beyond out of patience, and if we're to the point now where it's like, okay, it's only a matter of how many days before something really bad happens. So we need to close that camp 30 days at the very least. And if you're not going to do that, because I hear very often that you really aren't going to, I'd like to see an agenda item for the Coastal Commission. I'd like to see an agenda item for this camp to be closed. Number one, camp closed. If you're not going to close it, where's the agenda items for Pico Park? Where's the agenda items for the Coastal Commission? And why are we stating that we're only in a lawsuit because these people threaten to sue? We're in a lawsuit because we don't have a shelter as per law to provide, and that's why we cannot enforce our anti-camping ordinance. You've got a camp with less than a dozen campers all over. The justification for this camp is null and void. There's no justification for it anymore. How many laws are you going to violate? How many people and their children, their health and safety are you going to violate?
Appreciate it.
Please close the camp 30 days.
Any comments on this item? I have a couple of comments, actually. First of all, I have had 3 or 4 meetings in the last 2 or 3 weeks. One of them was with Supervisor Bartlett. Sheriff Barnes was there. Every South Orange County mayor was there addressing this issue. It was about a 2-hour meeting, very well attended. I want to thank the Sheriff's Department for answering a lot of our questions. Items discussed was a regional shelter at the county, various locations, property. I've been in contact with Mike Levin's office talking about what federal property is available. And then I had a meeting as well with Assemblyman Bill Burrow, Mayor Greg Raths from Mission Viejo, and others from Laguna Hills and elsewhere about another regional shelter solution. So yeah, we've been out having a lot of meetings talking about regional solutions, because that is ultimately what the solution is. 2 items I wanted to bring up for a future discussion at the council is an ordinance banning 4-sided tents at parks. And also wanted to look at an ordinance addressing the sleeping and loitering on the train platform in North Beach. And we've had discussion about that before, so I'd like to look at those items. One of the items, and just for the speaker's benefits, I never hear any comment on is sort of the solutions that are proposed. I hear about closing the campment, but what does that do? It just lets them go back to going anywhere. And let me finish, Ms. Smith. You've had 3 chances to talk tonight. I didn't interrupt you once. We can send them back to other places of town, but guess what? There are schools there, there are parks there, there are high fire danger areas there. There's no easy solution. I challenge you all, because honestly, I'm all ears. Ms. Smith, please. Ms. Smith, please. Do not interrupt me, please. I challenge you all to come back and present me with a place in town that doesn't have to have an EIR, that is not a high fire risk, that's not near an elementary school, a park, or some other area, or residences or otherwise, and find me that perfect solution that we can point to, because frankly, there's 4 people here that are ready to jump all over that. In the interim, what we've done is we've set a sunset date on that encampment. We've brought in tents that are required to be taken down daily. I drive by that camp 3 times a day to see how it's doing. There are no tents in the middle of the day because we require them to take them down. The reason that folks not from San Clemente aren't allowed in that encampment is because I heard from you folks that you were upset that too many people were crowding into that encampment. So we limited it to San Clemente residents. And what did that do? It forced people not from San Clemente outside into Pico Park and back into North Beach.
Are you sure that's not?
Ms. Smith, please. There's no easy solution to this. I know because I deal with this almost every day. Ms. Smith. Ms. Smith, I'm going to ask you one more time to not interrupt the meeting. I'm going to ask you to leave. We're looking at this every single day. I talk to every other mayor, and guess who has a perfect solution to this? Not a single one of them. I've talked to every single one of my South County mayor counterparts about what we're doing, and they're all interested in this because guess what? It's cost effective, and at least it's something. It's not a $2.2 million shelter that we brought to this chamber and let people consider, and guess what? Nobody wanted it. Ms. Smith, Sheriff?
I got it. We just need to do a little explanation here, if you could, Mayor Pro Tem. Ms. Smith, when the council members are talking, the audience can't talk, or else they have to be asked to be removed. So do you understand that, when he's talking, that you can't yell? Is that clear?
Make comments.
No, you can't say anything. It's his turn to talk. So do you understand that when they're talking, you can't talk?
I do now, but the
Okay.
justification is really just outrageous.
You can write or speak when it's your turn another time, but not right now. And if you do, then we're gonna have to ask you to leave.
Fair enough.
Okay, thanks for confirming your understanding of the rules. Sorry, Mayor.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, I'll finish up. So I'm happy to come speak to Sea Summit as I have on 2 or 3 different occasions to talk about solutions, but I'm telling you right now, there's not a perfect solution that's going to make you happy or everybody else in the city happy. But to say that we're not working on it collectively, I can promise you I spend an inordinate amount of time on this issue, speaking with other members of the community, and we are light years ahead of what other communities are doing. And I admit it, it's not perfect. There are definitely issues of what we've done, but it's better than doing absolutely nothing, which was the alternative. So we've made a commitment that it's temporary. We've set a sunset date on that site for June. We're going to live by that commitment, and I'm going to look at every one of my council members, and if we can find a solution tomorrow before the end of the year, we're going to do that to close that encampment down and to move it somewhere else. If it doesn't happen by the end of the year, we'll move January, February, the earliest opportunity. We're not going to languish on the issue. We are not ignoring the issue. Certainly not avoiding Sea Summit, and I'm more than willing to come talk to those folks to tell you what we're doing. All you have to do is ask. And the only thing I would ask is when you come to the dais, come with solutions. If you have an idea that you think is better, I'm all ears to listen to it. But to date, 5 months, I haven't heard one. So that's all I have.
Mayor and Council, can we just have you concur in the direction to bring back those 2 enactments? One relates to presence on the Metrolink platform, the other tents and parks.
I saw a lot of nodding heads. So.
Okay, sorry, I was taking notes.
We all agreed with those recommendations.
We'll have those on your next agenda.
Okay, the next item, Kathy Dietrich resigned from the Investment Advisory Committee. She was one of the industry specialists, and Nicholas Cage resigned from the Beaches Parks Recreation Commission. I agendized this to give you the option to either direct me to recruit to fill the vacancies, or to enable you to determine to leave the vacancies vacant pending the committee changes that are proposed to become operative on July 1st.
So I'm going to ask that we follow in our treasurer's recommendation, which is leave it vacant until July 1st, 2020.
Second.
All right.
I agree.
I agree with that as well, so let's take that direction.
Okay.
Do you need a motion, or is
Okay.
that sufficient? Okay.
Nope, got it, okay. And Michelle Schumacher's term on the Orange County Mosquito and Vector Control District Board of Trustees expires in early January. Council can you can appoint one of your members to serve in that position for either a 2 or a 4-year term, or you can direct me to solicit applications from San Clemente registered voters to fill the vacancy.
So I don't have a strong preference. Once we have a full council, we're going to have to consider appointments to all the various committees, commissions, et cetera. Could we possibly look at a council member taking this role over at that time? I'd be willing to serve if we need to, so I'll
Or
put my
you can
money
do
where
it
my
now,
mouth is.
whatever you like.
Yeah, but it would not be my preference, but I think that's the direction I'm headed at the 2-year term. But as an alternative, I know Chris is getting ready to jump in, can we dual track those items? Like, could we seek out applications, and then if we decided later on that we want our council member wants to fill that role, could we go that route? I saw it as an or, I didn't see an
Yeah.
and or. And
Yeah. That would be up to you if you want to interview and then say no.
well, I don't want to assume that a council member wants to take that on, but at the same time, I mean, if we get a great applicant that it would be really good, then I'd be willing to consider that as well.
Yeah, that's
Well-
true. I'd support that as
In the
well.
past, we've had residents that have been really interested in it, much more than council members, because we have so much else to do and it's very far away. So my preference is to still advertise for it, because I just don't see a council member being able to make it all the time. That's the problem.
dual tracking is a good, if somebody wants to throw their hat into that arena, that block.
Sounds like you just did.
Yeah.
Okay, did you want to do the interviews then on December 17th? That's the last council meeting before the,
I don't want to set the interviews yet, because last time we didn't get applications and we had to extend the application deadline. So let's not set the interviews yet until we get applications.
okay. So I'll recruit.
I'll concur with that.
Okay. City manager?
Really quick, just wanted to give an announcement. We are planning to do a toll road town hall meeting on Wednesday, November 13th at the community center from 6 to 9 p.m. A press release should be going out tomorrow. We have confirmed attendance by Caltrans, OCTA, TCA, Assemblyman Bill Breaux, and Senator Pat Bates. And our Mayor Pro Tem Dan Bain will be moderating it. And it'll be streamed live as well, so people that can't make it can watch it from their home as well. So press release forthcoming tomorrow. That's it.
City attorney?
No, I don't have anything left, thank you.
Appointment of council member to attend the city selection committee meeting on November 14th, and this was agendized by Mayor Pro Tem Bain.
So I'm going to nominate myself, because I'm sure there's nobody that's going to jump all over doing this, but
And you're
Kathy?
just doing that because you're filling in as the mayor pro tem, because it's usually the mayor that goes.
It is.
So it
but-
should be you.
Yeah, so nominating myself
Okay.
again.
Okay. Well, I'm just pointing it out.
Yeah.
That it should be you. But if anyone looked at this, we're all supposed to chime in on how we should vote. There really isn't anything here. OCTA in every single district only had one person apply.
Yeah,
So
that's-
I'm assuming OCTA wants all these people, and Lori Davies is the one for District 5. So she's been there before. We hope that she would be kind to San Clemente and think about the issues that we have with Caltrans and TCA butting heads on projects, but she's been there for a long time. So I looked at it, I didn't see anything that I needed to
It's
to ask
nothing
you about.
earth-shattering, yes.
No.
It's
So I just wanted to point that out.
effectively a proxy vote,
Yes, but we are supposed to all, as a council, look at that.
and I welcome
Okay.
any input you want to provide, certainly.
So I nominate, I'll second that motion for Dan Bain.
Okay, so a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye. One thing that I would like to bring up, because our mayor has passed away, Joanne, does he need a letter saying that he can go? Because I've been there before where they, Miguel Polito from Santa Ana tried to stop me from voting on an AQMD measure because he thought I didn't have permission from the mayor to be there. So can you make sure that we have that?
Give me all consents, et cetera, that I need permission slips, et cetera. Okay, no, it's a fair point. I appreciate that, Kathy. All right, so the other item that I agendized, I got a letter from Supervisor Bartlett about a 50-year time capsule that they're going to be putting in place in Dana Point, and I had no brilliant ideas off the top of my head as to what we could contribute as a city, and I know that our shot clock is relatively short on that. So is there a way for us to quickly solicit public feedback or input on?
We can definitely provide an opportunity for the public to comment some ideas that we had thought about amongst staff, and we were actually going to task it to our BPR rec manager, Samantha Wiley, would be some mementos from our 90th birthday. We have like the Rick Delante commemorative poster, as well as pictures of the council members that were obviously seated during that time, our flag, and other types of items. So if you're okay with that, I'll task Samantha with soliciting
Infinitely better
input.
ideas than I came up with. So.
And a challenge coin would be great, too.
Yes, and the challenge coin's great
We
call.
can
Yeah,
fit it all in
absolutely.
an 8.5 by 11 envelope.
So
Stuff
we
it in there.
can do that and get it done.
That's great.
Yep.
Okay, so
Good ideas.
adopting staff recommendation. All in favor of that? Yeah, all right.
Yes.
Thank you.
So we didn't have any council comments. I have a couple
Oh,
items.
I do. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
go.
You go ahead, but I'll go after you.
So just, the speakers didn't speak, but I met with Brenda Wells from Freedom 5 Network about a model ordinance that she wanted proposed to address human trafficking. I'd like us to work with them and look at adopting an ordinance. And then I've heard a lot of chatter about and received a lot of emails about expanding our no smoking ordinance or non-smoking ordinance and possibly looking at like Del Mar, for example. So I'd like to have support agendize expanding to Del Mar our non-smoking ordinance.
I support that. Okay, and this item was brought to my attention again from a resident, and the city attorney's been involved in these email conversations back in June. It was brought to my attention that the city manager's contract automatically extends on November 19, 2019. Scott's been involved in this, and then Mayor Pro Tem Bain recently at the resident's request. And there are rational reasons why the resident reached out back, because many in the community have echoed at council meetings for this to be looked at. And it doesn't mean any termination, it just means that the contract doesn't automatically renew for 2 years. So it would basically remain and extend just through 2021. As the contract reads. If nothing is done by November 19th, then it rolls for 2 years. And then the other suggestion was with the 120-day waiting period after the election, yes. So that was just a comment. There's no action on the position. But anyway, so it was to take a action on the contract so that the contract end date will remain November 2020. So do we have any support on that? Or city attorney, do you want to provide any input to that since you've been privy to the emails on that with the resident?
I think you summarized the issue. What I think you're seeking, you can't discuss tonight, obviously, but because it's not on your agenda, you'd be talking about putting it on a future agenda.
Absolutely.
I'm willing to agendize it. I just understood, Scott, from one of your comments that even if we had that item agendized at the next council meeting, it still wouldn't even be timely at that point.
It would come after the trigger because your next meeting's on the 19th. So it would be too late to do it for this year's extension.
Okay.
At your regular meeting.
So what is the point?
Well, I guess that's my concern, though, is if we're already too late,
If it's something that we'd like to do, it would have to be a special meeting, one item special meeting. The special meetings are one
I'm not
item.
going to support that at all. This is council decision. Prior council members did this, and has to do with labor negotiations with the city manager, and you can't just undo them at this point, so I'm not going to be for that.
Actually, the contract does, the city attorney has actually confirmed with me, and I shared it with the resident in June, that the council can, but it doesn't sound like you're supporting it. But it's not something the city council cannot take a position on at a future meeting. It may, or a special meeting. It's not something that is out of the ordinary. So does anyone support doing that at a special meeting?
No, I'm going to support Kathy on that one.
Okay. Okay. All right, thank you.
Move that we adjourn the next regular council meeting, which will be held on November 19th, 2019. The council chamber is located at 100 Avenida, Presidio, San Clemente, California. Closed session times are considered 5 p.m. and the regular business meeting will take place at 6 p.m.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Adjourned 4-0.